Bucket calibration.
Let's begin by discussing the tools that you will need to complete a bucket calibration. Digital level that reads angles in degrees. 6-foot levels can expedite the process, but it can be done with a 2-foot level as well. Tape measure in engineer scale. If you have a tape measure in inches, be sure to convert your values to tenths before entering them into the machine. Magnetic jig. To get the most accurate measurements, you want a rod that is straight and does not bend or flex easily. Some of the more common tools you will need are a plumb bob, marker, and rubber mallet. Additionally, having a pen and sheet of paper to record measurements will reduce the number of times you must climb up and down the machine. Open the attachment menu by pressing the bucket symbol on the right side of the machine panel. In the attachment menu, you will see 20 attachments to choose from. Select one from the list. This will be used to calibrate your new bucket. Be sure not to select one that has already been calibrated to another attachment. Press the Edit button in the bottom left of the screen, and name the bucket whatever you prefer. Most commonly used attachment will be conventional bucket, but there are many other attachment types to choose from. Then press the Edit Attachment button in the middle right of the screen. Enter the weight of the bucket. This should include the weight of any coupler or thumb that is on the machine as well. Before entering the shape adjustment menu, take note of any date that may be present. This shows the date when that particular attachment was calibrated last. If there is a recent date here, you may want to go back and select a different attachment in the machine panel so as not to erase any existing calibrations. Now enter the shape adjustment menu, which is where you will be entering all of your values for the calibration. Opening this at the start of your bucket calibration provides a good visual for what measurements you need to take. Take a picture of this screen on your phone to use as a reference, and then let's get started on the measurements at the bucket. Start by marking the measured points on the bucket with marker. These are labeled A through E. The machine will use these points to determine the profile of the bucket. It is not required that the bucket teeth be plumb to the pivot pin for marking the points and pulling the lengths. However, it is required that the bucket teeth be plumbed before measuring the angles in degrees. To mark point E, put your level through the center of the bucket pins and mark the point where the level intersects with the back of the bucket. To mark point D, put one end of your level on point E that you just marked, and then mark the edge of the bucket where your level touches it. For points B and C, you will simply fill in the space of the bucket between points A and D evenly. Begin your length measurements by recording the P value first, which is the bucket pivot pin to bucket link pin. This is not to be confused with the E measurement that you will take soon. Now you can apply your magnetic jig to the bucket pin. Use the rubber mallet to tap it into place until it is centered on the pin. Using your tape measure, measure the length of points A through E from the center of the jig at the bucket pivot pin. To get the L value, measure from the tip of the bucket tooth to the center of the bucket pivot pin. For the T value, measure the length of the bucket tooth from its tip to the back side of it where it meets the bucket. To get the W value, measure the widest point of the bucket at the bucket teeth. To plumb the teeth to the bucket pivot pin, hang the plumb bob from the jig so that it hangs directly over one of the teeth. Then curl the bucket in or out so that it touches the string. Another method for doing this is to use the 6-foot level, which can be helpful in windy conditions. There are two methods you can use when measuring angles. We'll discuss both of them. Regardless of which method you use, be sure to record all measurements in degrees after taking each reading. The first and fastest method is to use a long 6-foot digital level to measure directly from the jig to each point, resting the level on the jig. The second method is used when your digital level isn't long enough to reach from one of the points to the jig. For this method, you will pull a string from the jig to each point, making reference marks on the side of the bucket. Then you will measure those reference points with your shorter digital level. This allows you to get the calibration done even when you don't have a long 6-foot level. However, both methods do still require a digital level that measures in degrees. Before entering your measured values into the machine, we must calculate the angles by adding or subtracting with 90. For points A through D, you will subtract your measured values from 90. For point E, you will simply add your measured value to 90. There is one final step before entering your values into the machine panel. Check your bucket tooth position to ensure that it is still plumb to the bucket pivot pin. The bucket must be plumb as you save the calibration in the machine panel. Finally, you can enter all of your measured and calculated values into the machine panel. When doing this, be careful not to get any of the values mixed up, as it can be easy to do on this screen. Once they are all entered, double-check them to ensure the values in the machine match the values you recorded when taking your measurements. After saving your attachment, you will want to conduct a position check to ensure that the attachment is accurate. The topic of position check will be covered in another video. This concludes our discussion regarding bucket calibration.